Okay, and we're COMP1011, and it's week 1, lesson 1, and I think it's part 5 or something like that. We'll figure it out. I think I stopped a bunch of times because people needed help, but that's okay. For the people watching at home who couldn't make it today, we just fixed a bunch of stuff with Git and Eclipse because people were trying to connect. But the process isn't that difficult, and we'll go over it again for people who aren't here. Maybe next week we'll do it again in a different way. So what I did do was, and I'm going to put this up on Blackboard when I have a chance, I kind of put together this old PowerPoint presentation for Advanced Java. It's for Chapter 3. Even though it says Advanced Java, it's actually part of your old Intro to Java and Object-Oriented Programming. So this is the previous section would have had this Chapter 3. You probably have already done this. And we covered in that class classes and objects and all that kind of stuff. So this, use it as a reference card. If people haven't seen it before, or if you don't have the book or whatever, you're not planning to buy it, this is kind of explains in a nutshell all the stuff that we required from the book. It just comes right from the book and the publisher of all the objects and methods and what they all mean. And it gives us some examples of an account class, not a player class, and how things are, how things work. So again, we talked about a couple things. Just to remind you, we didn't do setter and getter methods. Remember setters and getters. Why do we use setters and getters as opposed to, making them public, the properties? Why is it better to make setters and getters? Again, this is just refresher.
Especially if you're doing object-oriented programming.
We are, which we are, right? Which is what?
To code methods.
To code them?
Or
Call the methods. Well, that's one thing, but we do it because we want to use information hiding. That's one of the pieces that make us achieve true object orientation. All right, information hiding or data hiding, if you will. That's what we do. We only want to show to the external world the properties through a getter and setter, right? So we have a value. If we want to set a value or get a value, we set up a getter and setter for each property that we want to do that for. That's the proper way to do it. So an example of this, if you remember just from previous times, was here's my a method to set the name in the object, so set name, and here's get name. And if you notice, we'd love to have this getter and setter type keyword, right? But we're not using that here. Okay, so in other words, so there's two different methods. Set name, we get a string name that comes into the class, right? And what we're doing is we're setting the name with this.name is equal to name from the string, right? The name, which is this one, right, is going to accept the value of name that's incoming from the where the class is called. Okay, what do I mean by that? Hold on there. I will explain everything in just one second. In other words, here I am, and I have a couple of properties in my person class, right? A couple of objects. My weight and my height. We haven't defined their access modifiers. What should they be by default? How much? Private. Because we're information hiding. We're using best practices. So we're just using this silly example here that we did from this morning or this afternoon. So we're going to go private float height and private float weight, right? And when we do that, it says we get a value of the field person.height is not used, right? Well, we never used a height yet, right? But they're both private now. And if I want to try and access them, if I want to try and access them from my player.java class, where I say, if I start typing in Tom, from an accessibility perspective, I don't get height and weight anymore. They used to be there though. When I first did this, you could see height and weight properties. Now we don't see them anymore because we're information hiding. And in fact, if I type it in, height is equal to 10 feet tall, right? It's going to say, hey, I don't understand what you mean. It says the field person.height is not visible. So there's two different fixes. I can change the visibility of the height, right? Or I can create a getter and setter for the height. This is the quick fix that I want. Take a look, guys. This is the lovely thing about this. So I'm going to click on this, and it gives me a little dialog box that says, okay, I want to create a getter and a setter right away for us. Get height and set height. Okay? So here they are right now. New getter created, new setter created. It's going to create everything for us. And then it says field access and declaring type. Use setter and getter. Insert new methods where? After eats. But I want to do it, you know, as an example. I can go after eats, or I can go before. I can put them anywhere I want. Or I can put after the person is declared. Or as the first method. So let's do that. As the first method. Getters and setters, which is probably the right approach. Let's preview them. This is what they're going to look like now. These are the changes that are going to happen. This is the power of Eclipse. And a lot of other programs will do this as well. Like if you use IntelliJ, or if you use, for God help us, BlueJ, you know, or something else like that.
Thank you.
God help us.
I hate it so much.
That was terrible.
Yeah, I know. I keep talking with Andrew and telling her, no, don't do it.
Yeah.
Right? But she, you know.
It was our choice.
Well, she likes to use it because, and I understand, and I talked to her about it as well. Again, BlueJ is a good way of, it's a learning tool. When you look at it, it tells you, it describes the classes and objects. The problem with it is it's not a modern tool that we use for development at all, right? So, and it's not a very user-friendly tool. Anyway, so this is the changes that's going to make. So it's showing us our current, this height and this weight, and then it's going to show us what the changes are going to be, right? Height and weight are here, and it's going to add in two new methods, right, as fixes, a public float get height and a public void set height, right? So there's two different methods, setters and getters, that are automatically set up for us. And then we'll press OK. This doesn't happen here. This happens in the person class. And this is where we want it, right? So here's where it happens, right here, right after this point right here. And we can actually annotate it by saying getters and setters. We can put all our getters and setters here for all of our properties if we want, right? And because we make these public, I'm going to just save everything now and go back to my player class, right? Look at this. It gives me an example too. Set height to 10, which is what I really wanted to do. Instead of saying tom.setHeight or height is equal to 10, I can't do that anymore. I got to go tom set height, and I can choose a height. It even gives me code hinting to help me out. Right? So I want to make a height in pound, or height in feet. So obviously 6 is maybe 6.1 would be the right thing to do. Right? And it says, oh, there's a problem. What's the problem? I'm trying to set a height of 6.1. It says I can cast the argument to float. Right? I can change my method set height to set height double instead of set height int. Right, which is what I was asking for, right? I can create a method set height double in type person, so a different setter, because I can have more than one setter or getter depending on what I want to do. So this great thing is it gives us an option to refactor our code to make sure that we get what we want. Let's set it back to just something like, and I'm setting it as a whole number, integer. If I go back here and it says float. Our public, it's even though I'm saying it's a height, right? How come it's not accepting my 6.1? Why is it thinking that it's a double? There's an issue here. Float should be able to support it, right? Why does 6.1 not a float and is trying to make it into a double? Anyone? It doesn't like the decimal. What do we need to do with the decimal when we do? You know, is there something we need to do with it that we used to do? I know C# we use F's and D's and all kinds of weird things. Do we do the same thing with Java?
Yeah, it's like percent.
Oh no, that's the formatting you're thinking about. We'll come back to that. I'm going to circle back to that one. But for now, let's set our height. Let's set our height to 7. So I'm 7 feet tall. Ooh. And I'm going to say OK. Yes, yes, yes. I want to save and replace it. I saved everything. And I've made a couple changes here. So now I think it's time to do a commit. Right? And I'm going to do that by going team commit. And if you notice, there's a shortcut key. Right? It's different for every computer. Mine is Shift command 3, yours will be probably different, right? But I want to do a commit, and I want to include all the files that I updated. These are all the files, right? I can only include the one I changed, or if I want all the rest of them, like the demo, get ignore, which I don't want to touch these other ones, then I leave them blank. And here I say, you know, added getters and setters for height property of the person class. Nice and descriptive. Commit. And now, if I want to, I can go to team and I can push upstream, right? Which is what I want to do. Or I can push branch to master. If I go push branch master, it's going to say, well, there is already a master. What's going on here? What are you doing? Right? But what I really want to do is push the right thing, push to upstream. And press OK. Done. Now if I check online and I refresh and I go back into this file, and if I can see that if I go into my source files, into my person class, then I have my getters and setters online, right? Which is what I want to have. Okay. So getters and setters are important, and it's something that we use for information hiding. Just more of a refresher. Okay, class declaration we did. Let's look at some other examples. Here's a good programming practice 3.1. We prefer to list a class's instant variables first in the class's body so that you see the names and types of the variables before they're used in the class's methods. Best practices. That's easy to see. I'm just going to try and see if I can pull up another example. Here's another good practice. We could have avoided the need for the keyword this here by choosing a different name for the parameter in line 10. And this is, they're showing you a, they're talking about a line that's inside in the book, right? We'll just go to another a name example. There we go. Creating and manipulating an account object. So we're inside this class account test, and look, I've got this import java.util.scanner. I'm actually adding in an additional class in here, and I'm saying that I've created an account class. I've made my account a member of, or a new account object, right? Here's my account. I'm using the account class to make a new account object. And then from there, I'm using the set name of a method, the setter, to set the name of my account. Very, very simple. And this is the same stuff we've kind of covered today. And there's your %s, %n, %n. Look. Right? Because what we're doing is we're saying we use the comma instead of a plus. The comma interpolates. That's interpolation. What actually subs in the value where we put our percentages. Right? And the plus concatenates. It takes our value, converts it into a string, and adds it on. There's two different ways of doing this. Right? Both different ways. They both do different things. Okay. Initial name is null. Instantiating an object we covered. Calling class account's name. Here's error prevention tip number 3.1. Never use a format control, a string that was input from the user. It's a good one. Because when the method system.out.printf evaluates the format control string in its first argument, the method performs tasks based on the conversion specifiers. If the format control string were obtained from the user, a malicious user could supply conversion specifiers that would be executed by system.out.printf, possibly causing a security breach. Right? Now this is all good if we're using this from a console perspective. It goes away a little bit more when we use some kind of GUI, a UI control, where we can control how the user inputs his data. Right? Just trying to see if there's anything else that we missed. Compiling and executing an app with multiple classes, we've already done that. How about these UML diagrams? Do you guys remember these things? Did you guys do that with Andrew?
We usually, yeah.
Okay, so one thing that I may ask for is if you're, and this might come out, if we do a UML diagram for a class, then there's 3 different components, right? And actually, if you have a class with Jarrett someday with on the project side, Jarrett Wright does a lot of project management and so on. I don't know if you guys had Jarrett at all. Well, you might, and when you do, he might get you to do these UML diagrams, right? Especially for systems analysis and design. And there's 3 pieces to them. There's the top compartment, the middle compartment, and the bottom compartment. And each one of them has a different reason for being, right? So the top is the name of the class. The middle one gives you your properties, and then the bottom one has your methods. So this is how you lay out your class. If you're defining a class, in a visual way, and you're connecting one class to the other, because you're actually creating your program, so that way you're conceptualizing. You're kind of putting all your classes together, saying, okay, well, I need a person class because this person class is going to do this. Well, this is what the person class or the account class would look like before you actually code anything. And then it talks about here how what the top compartment does and so on. I'm not going to go through that. I just wanted you to see if you've seen that. I want to see if you've seen that before. So I want to make sure that we've gone through this all. And there's your getter and setter example, where these are the 2 things that are visible outside the class. And this is the idea of encapsulation. The idea of encapsulation, which is part of object-oriented programming, is encapsulating means to put everything that's under the hood in a capsule, as opposed to showing everything. People don't care that there is height and weight necessarily, or even weight, right? In our person example, all they care about is that the person walks and eats, right? They don't know how he walks and eats. That's a mystery, right? It's a black box, but they know that it can happen. Just like if we were making a some kind of player ship, okay, and the player can turn left and turn right. We don't know that he has to put thrusters on at a 20 degree angle for him to turn right or left. That's irrelevant to us. All we need to know is that the ship's made the turn, right? Encapsulation, information hiding, details that are not important to the user. Okay. And primitive types are all the ones that we normally use. Boolean, bytes, characters, shorts, ints, long, floats, all that stuff. And we can convert them. Now, one of the troubles we're having here is when we have this, this conversion that we're trying to do, we're trying to take in data into an object as a float, and I'm putting 6 dot something, and it's saying it can't be. This has to be a double, right? How do we format a float? Why is it asking for that data? And I'm going to leave you with that. Next time when we come together, I'm going to ask you for that exact kind of question. Why is it that 6 dots for my height is telling me it should be a double, not a float? Okay. We talked about this. Here's 2 different objects, and we can cover this right now. So we've got Tom. Tom walks, and Tom also, we can set a height for Tom. But we can also have a height for somebody else, because Tom's not the only person. Let's make another person. So person Mike, right, is equal to new person. And Mike also walks, right? Mike also walks. But there's an issue here, right? We can't differentiate the difference between Tom walking and Mike walking. It's still going to say hello world, and it's still going to say, you lost weight and so on. We want to kind of make it so that when Tom loses weight, it's going to say Tom, and when Mike loses weight, it says Mike. And of course, this is back down to the basics of object-oriented programming. Bear with me, guys, and don't kill me when I do this. But we need to make a change to the person class. And how do we do that? Where do we need to make a change? It's got to be inside the constructor. The constructor's got to take in the name of the person, right? So we're going to put a string. Now, is it a capital string or a lowercase string? Huh?
String is always capitalized. Because it's a class.
It is a class. It's a complex data type. It's not a primitive data type, and therefore we have to use a capital. All right? So public person string, and we're going to say that we're going to use this as name, right? So the name, now we also should set up a some kind of private string that's also of the name. So Tom, the person's name, should be there. But there's a difference between this name that's incoming into the constructor and the name that's up here, which is part of our our property, right? So what we need to do is we need to say, as it comes in to the person class, we're going to say this dot name is equal to name. And this is what's confusing. Sometimes we see this and we're like, what the hell? Why is it this dot name is equal to name? That makes no sense, right? Well, it does make sense because we've named the string name, right, as name. Now I can say person name or name of the person. I can make that identifier or variable as long as I want. But often you'll see it like this online. So just to see what it does, right? So now that we have this dot name has a value, we can use this somewhere else. Instead of you lost weight, we can interpolate that, or we can use it the way we've done it already. So we can say this dot name plus lost weight, Tom lost weight, or Mike lost weight, and then we can do the same thing. This dot name plus, and instead of weigh, we can say weighs, and then this pounds, right? We can do that. And we'd have to do the same thing down here, right? So, because it's accessible, this dot name plus, and then leave a little bit of space, right, from a formatting perspective. This is one way we could do it, for sure. And then this dot name plus. We could also do the other way, which, by the way, is, for many people, is preferred, which is using the interpolation by using %s and so on. We'll do that another day. Not really that important to us right now. Okay, if we've done this correctly, now whenever I do that, it's going to request for me.
You leave a space between this dot and space name.
Where?
Under the method void box.
Yep.
Yeah, this.
Oh yes. Still took it though, didn't it? Right? So it didn't error out, but it's still good that you found it. It would have caused a problem though. All right, so we're going to save that, and we're also going to go to player.java. Now we have a problem. Now we have two errors for our class because person requires a name, right? And when we start declaring person, if I go like this, person, it should actually tell me from a code perspective, it'll say, look, it needs a string. That's what it's listening for, right? So, and if you notice, it says person string, anonymous inner type, right, of string. So it's looking for a name. I need to give it a name before I can continue. So obviously my name here is Tom, right? And there's other funky ways we can do this, but I'll just leave it the simple way. And make this as Mike. Right now it's all good. It's all happy with me. And let's run it and see what happens. So hello world, 10. It says Tom lost weight. Tom weighs 180 pounds. Mike lost weight. Mike weighs 180 pounds.
Tom in capital with a capital T, but then you have Tom walks with a smaller T. Is that not affecting anything?
Here?
Yeah, the new person. It's
Here?
That's just text. Okay, yeah.
So that's good to know. So this Tom is the string, right, for my name.
Yeah.
And this Tom is the object. So this is the thing, this is where confusion comes into play. I'm glad you noticed that, right? Because it looks kind of funny and weird. And then strength doesn't make any sense for my player class. Maybe I want to make my player class, for whatever reason, this strength, I'm going to rename this thing to year, right? Because it's a year, and we're going to say the year is, of course, 2015. That makes more sense, right? And this is going to be renamed year, and so on. I could have done that. That's one way to do it. Or I could refactor. And refactoring would change all those. We'll do that another time. Okay, so int year is equal to 2015. Hello world, you know, in 2015. Or we're, it's 2015. It's 2015, right? And maybe we want to even go farther. Hello world, it's 2015, and we're going to add also concatenate another character, right? Just to make it so it's more realistic. And then we'll run it again. Hello world, it's 2015. Tom lost weight, Tom weighs blah blah. Mike lost weight, Mike weighs blah blah, right? And the thing is, this is great, but Mike and Tom weigh the exact amount because they've been defaulted to those that amount, 206 feet. And probably the right thing for the person class is to ask for those values when you're inside the constructor again. Make sense? So I don't want the constructor over here just to ask for my name. It should ask for my name, my height, my weight, right? And if that's the case, and this is in the person class, right? And here I set my weight, and I'm using the setter for my height, which is kind of weird. Why not? Because it exists. The setter exists, and that's why I'm using it that way. But this shouldn't be. This shouldn't be like this at all. It should actually be like this. So it's going to be a float, and this is where we're going to get into trouble again, right? We're going to get into trouble. Float, because I don't care. Remember, what's the difference between a float and a double? Single precision, double precision. How many decimal places does a float get? 7. And what's the double get? 15. Yeah, 15 or something like that. Right? That's all it is. Single precision, double precision.
Why would it still give you an issue?
Why? That's a great question. Why? It's going to give me the same error. If I make this a double, it's going to error out over here, right? Let's make it a float, and we're going to say, because we'll make it a height, and this is the one time aside from you can't set the height without using the setter, but you can set the weight. Okay, so we'll say this dot weight is equal to weight, right? So I'm asking for my name and my weight now. My height, I only can use the setter in this example, right? And if I go back, huh?
Would it run with that error
What error?
when you have a double?
Let's see. So now I'm going to add in my name, and now it's asking for, if I control enter, it says I need a float, right? So I need to add a floating point number, and my floating point number for Tom, for my weight, this is my weight, is let's say 225.3. Okay, I'm gonna add that in. And for Mike, it's going to be 180.9.
You know these people.
I don't know them, right? So this is interesting, Mike and Tom, but still it's erroring out. Why is it erroring out? It says the constructor person string double is undefined. It's listening for a double, right? And yet we're listening for a float. What's the problem here?
Decimal.
Okay, tell me what the fix is beyond what this is telling us. How can we find the fix? Google it. That's the best way, really. Or stack.
Or you can apply math to it.
Can I?
I don't.
Let's try it, man.
Yeah. So like you can go 225.3 times.
Come on. How about this?
Yeah.
Would that fix it?
Okay.
I was hoping you guys figure it out on your own. I guess I don't have to do that now. If I run it now, I get 202.77. You have to remember, you have to format the float, right? 202.77 and 162.81. It calculates it properly, and it says Mike and Tom, and hello world is 2015. So all we've done, we've passed 2 parameters to the constructor of the class that is person, right? The 2 parameters that it's listening for is name and weight. But both Mike and Tom are always 6 feet tall as a default, because it's right here. If I want to change how tall Mike or Tom is, I got to use a setter to do that. That's how I've set up the class. Is it
They
correct?
have different height, wouldn't that be two different?
They have they have the same height right now.
No, if it was the case that they were different heights.
Then I'd have to set it after the fact. I couldn't set it in the constructor unless I asked for it in the constructor.
Yeah. So
But I mean that's fine too. So then it would be float
name,
weight,
float height, and float weight.
correct, and that would be three different variables that I've been looking for. Again, guys, this is like the most primitive of primitives when we talk about how we set this stuff up. Dude, none of us are. And if you haven't done Java in a long time, you're like, oh yeah, this is how you do it. And that's why we're doing this class. Today is an oh yeah moment. Next week, it's not going to be an oh yeah moment anymore. Right? Next week, we're actually going to do work, right? And so some of you aren't going to be as bored. Okay, let's do a push to GitHub because we've made some changes now. Here's my workflow, right? So I'm going to right click. If you see the little greater than sign, I know I have to make a commit. So I'm going to go to the team and commit. And I'm going to say modified a player class and a person class too, right? I actually did both. And if you notice what it's doing, it's saying, hey, all you're changing here, the files that are being changed, there's two, and they're inside the player class, right? Okay, I've done that. I've got one commit that handles everything, and if you notice, if I do this again, I'm going to push it to upstream. And after I've done that and everything's great and grand, and if all things being equal, I refresh, then if you notice, all the changes that I've asked for string, height, and weight, or name and weight changes as well. One more thing, I showed you how to do it when we did that online magic. Remember we changed something online? Well, I kind of showed one person how to do this, but we'll do this together. So I'm in my my repositories. I go to my lesson 1, and I'm like, I'm not with my computer, right? I don't have my computer. And I'm going to go to my source here, and I'm going to go to person Java, right? And in my person class, you know what? I want to make those changes online. So I'm going to edit my changes here, and physically online, I'm going to make all the changes to Java that I need to make, right? So, what do I want to change? I want to change the constructor. This is that difficult change we're looking for, right? Where I add weight and height. So I want to accept the height as well, right? And here, I don't need to do this anymore. I need to actually change this. I have a setter, but in the setter, I want to say this.height is equal to height. And I'm not getting any code hinting, of course, because I'm online doing this work, right? Okay, this is cool. So I've changed this value. And maybe what I want to do when I'm doing it online is add a comment that says removed setter and use direct property access. Whatever, some kind of comment, right? And I made it right there so I know what I did. And here I'm doing it, I'm saying removed setter from constructor. Okay? I commit my changes. Now this isn't going to work anymore because I've modified in my source, I've modified my person but not my player. So to make this work properly, just to be fair, I'm going to edit this one as well. And so both files are being edited. And I'm going to say, well, Tom's height is 6'0" and Mike's height, he's a tall guy and lean, right? We're going to make him 6.5, 6.5 feet tall. So he's like 6'6", right? He's a tall guy and he's only 180 pounds. He's like skin and bones. All right. And okay, that's Mike. And we're going to kind of make some commits, some changes here as well. So updated player class to work with modified person class. So 2 commits. Okay, look. So I've got 2 commits happening. And if I look at the number of commits now that I have, I've got 6 commits. Here they are, right? Here's my last one, and here's the other one. But guess what? On inside my files in here, I don't have that. On my files, that's local, right? I don't detect what's going on online or if I'm collaborating with somebody. So if I'm working on something here, I've got to be able to synchronize with what's online first before I upload. Now I make another change. Here, I haven't updated anything. And you know what? I want to add another, to my person class, I want another property, my person, you know, IQ. That's weird. IQ, I'll make it IQ like this. And the private IQ is going to be a, let's make it an integer. So we'll round up. IQ, right? And we're not going to set it as well, but I'm just adding a new property. So I've made a change, right? I'm going to save it. Okay, now I've got a commit here. Let's just do that as well, right? And let's say I'm working collaboratively with somebody else. Okay? Here's my commit. Where's this commit going? The one I'm doing right now. Does anyone know? I'm doing it locally. So added, hold on, added a new IQ property to person class. I didn't do anything here. Let's see what happens. Okay, so I did that. That's good. And now I'm going to go and synchronize. Uh-oh. What do I do first? What if I was to push to upstream? Is that the right thing to do? No. It's never the right thing to do. Do you know why? If I pushed upstream, right, that means it's going to try and push my commit over the other commits that are already been done. There's already changes that have been done online. And now I'm looking to make other changes online when the changes online were done before I made my changes. From a timestamp perspective. Let's try it anyway. Push upstream. Up. It says push to get origin, and it says master, rejected, non-fast forward. What that means is that I'm in the wrong position. I've got a couple of commits online that are done before me, and now I've got to merge my changes. So I go, okay, that's fine. And now I'm going to go back into team, and I'm going to go merge. And if everything goes well, right, I'm going to press merge, and it's going to show the two changes. One, added IQ property, and the other one, modify player class and person class, and press OK. If all go well, I've merged them together, and if I go to my person class, right, here's my public person float weight. This is good, and it goes even further than this. Watch this. Now I'm going to try and do it again, because we're still in trouble. Now I'm going to push to upstream. Rejected. Why? Because non-fast forward. How come? Well, because we have another commit before this one. Right? So I'm going to go back down to team. I'm going to go over to merge. Press merge. And it's going to show the other one. Modify player class and person class. Both those are happening. Results. Added new IQ property. And it's not doing it, right? Because I'm trying to make a commit happen. So I'm trying to pull down, merge down the commit that's happening into my constructor, and I'm messed up. So what could I do? Well, I could do a fetch, right? Here's fetch from upstream. And then if I do that, it says, meh, updated player class to work. It says with modify person class, and then remove setter from the constructor. Press OK. Hey, how come it didn't work? Why? Because we're in trouble. That's why. Because now before pushing and setting and trying to merge together, it hasn't worked. And I've got two commits online, one commit inside, and I'm out of sync. I'm out of sync. I've got to do another merge. All right? And now it says a couple things. I've kind of did this fast forward. It says commit the results. No commit, prepare merge commit, but don't commit yet. Squash, merge changes into working directory, but don't change the commit. And if a fast forward, create a merge commit. If not, a fast forward, fail. If I press merge, it's going to show me the commits. There's what it is again. Here's the new head, right? Merge, remote tracking branch, origin master, and press OK. This didn't work. I can tell you it didn't work. And this is the problem with when we use a Git. Git has inherent issues. It doesn't matter whether you're doing it with JavaScript or whether you're doing it with, if you're doing it with Visual Studio or whatever, it doesn't matter. The problem with version control systems, which I would go into in more detail at a later time, is that you need to synchronize or fetch before you ever do a commit. And you need to do that because you want to fetch all the commits first. But the problem is, if you're working on the same file as somebody else, right? Like I'm working on both those two files, I've modified both those two files, and I'm pulling both those two files, which commit happened first? That's the challenge. We don't know. So there is, but they don't. But still, we don't know, and that's the problem. So there's different ways to go ahead and do that. So again, I can push my branch to the master. I can create a new branch, which is probably the one thing I could do. I could push to upstream, but every time I try and do this kind of stuff, even if I fetch from upstream or pull, right? If I pull, no reference to fetch from origin, everything up to date, right? There's nothing to do, right? Because from what it looks like, what the hell's going on? It sounds like elephants moving again. Someone's moving chairs or something. And I know it's not working because I know, right? This worked. Look, this is good, right? But here, it's finally up and synced up. Look, if you notice, my name, my weight, and my height have been there. I've been updated. I've removed my setter and used my property. Everything is up to date now. And when I run, everything is good, right? So there's inherent issues. This is where I'm trying to go. I know some of you have lost. I've lost some of you when I did this. But the challenge is, I'm just telling you, be careful with GitHub. GitHub is a great version tool, but it also can confuse the crap out of you if you're working with somebody else. So the fix, when you collaborate with somebody, a couple things to do. You can use check-in and check-out methodology, right? Are you done? Yeah? Okay, I'm ready to do my commit. Here it is, right? Or work on separate files. You're working on the graphics or on this particular class or method. I'm working on this method. The two shall never touch. You're not going to work on the same method as me. That makes no sense. If you and I are working on both the same methods, we're going to confuse the crap out of GitHub. But if I'm working on one and you're working on the other, they're not going to clash. You can always do an update. You can pull the stuff that you're always going to fetch first in this methodology and then push afterwards. If a mistake happens, merge. Or create a new branch. And we'll talk more about that as we go. So it has its issues. And this is I'll like to look at it like this. GitHub and version control is an ancillary technology. It's a technology aside from what we're doing. We're not just doing object-oriented programming. We're also using other external tools to make our workflow make sense so we don't lose our work. Okay, that's enough for me. I'm tired of talking, and I want to see you guys next week.